All right, I think this is the best light I'm gonna get in this setup. Just got back to the hotel. Well, not back to, but just entered the hotel here in Kansas City. It's technically not Kansas City. It's like near the airport. It's like something else, but today was amazing because like full circle with doing this job. Yesterday, we did a show about sexual assault, and in one of the scenes, the show's about sexual assault, and 3 of the scenes have relationships dealing with communication. And back in the day, somebody kind of made the remark, why are all these relationships heterosexual? And so the creator and owner of the company decided to make one of them non-heterosexual, and it didn't really change anything. It just meant that one of the relationships were not heterosexual. So last night, we had a show where we talked about sexual communication, and it went absolutely off the rails, not only in victim blaming, but in the fact that the audience couldn't get over the fact that one of the relationships was not heterosexual. And I said at the beginning of the talk, I said, when people are vulnerable, they will show you. They will absolutely show you. And I think I want to go further with that. When people are vulnerable and they don't know how to handle it, they will show you that they don't know how to handle it. And during one of the scenes, the relationship presented themselves as not heterosexual, and I shit you not, 30 men, most of them belonging to the football team and other athletic squads, walked out. They just walked out. They got really uncomfortable. And they laughed and they left, and then they tried to get back in because they needed credit to be at the show, and the doors were locked once they left. And it was very apparent what the feeling, what the mood, and what the resistance was. And with that being said, it made that show increasingly hard. And the second show, the same thing happened. And an audience member brought it up and said, why are all the men leaving once they learned that this couple isn't heterosexual? And I said, that's an interesting question. And I said, let's talk about that. And even though it went off the topic of sexual communication, we just got into why people felt vulnerable and their masculinity threatened, because we were talking about something that wasn't heterosexual. And when you talk about the LGBTQ plus community, why does it make you get into this mode of vulnerability? And so one guy, spoke up, and some other guy spoke up, and I said, one of the gentlemen was black, and he said a derogatory remark towards, he said, I'm cool with gay people as long as they don't come that close to me. And I said, can you think of how that might have translated to the civil rights era, or even right now, if a white person were to say, I'm okay with black people as long as they keep that over there? He thought for a moment, and then he said, no, it's not the same thing. And then another guy in the back said, hey, don't you ever equate blackness with gay? And I said, why not? And then he gave some answers. He just stuck to it. He said, don't ever do that. And I said, well, if you look at the civil rights movement and the gay rights movement, they're kind of one and the same. It's human rights. I mean, we're talking sociology here. We're talking identity. And he said, no, it's not the same. I was born black. And then that's when I knew that once he had said like several derogatory terms that were like, just derogatory terms for the LGBTQ plus community, I knew, okay, this conversation, I don't know how quickly or how much it can evolve in this space. And how much am I disservicing the conversation about sexual communication? And how much am I disservicing the conversation about the LGBTQ plus community if I really full on engage with this man? And I think for one of like the first 5 times, I said, well, maybe you should Google human rights. Maybe you should Google gay rights, civil rights, parallel. Like, look that up. And then he said, no, I'm not doing that. Then I went for one of the first times as a moderator. I said, well, then that's optional ignorance. And I don't think anybody's ever called you out for your ignorance. But this may be the first time that somebody's doing that to you, and that's me. And that may make you feel uncomfortable. Henceforth, why you don't want to make any moves. And I couldn't help the conversation at that point except for to call a spade a spade. And I just said, well, right now you know the move to make. You know how to educate yourself. You know how to help yourself. And you're saying you're willingly choosing not to do it. And once that happened, then and he said, no, don't ever say that to me. Then I said, well, then we'll leave it there. Because if you're choosing not to educate yourself about human rights, then I don't know how much further we can go with this conversation, and we have to move on. And we did move on, and we moved on to the next scene, and then there was a lot of victim blaming, and that was that. The interesting thing was afterwards, the person that was running the show, or was hosting us, she said, this is odd because we have a lot of trans students on campus. We have I think she said, Gay Student Right Alliance, or Gay Student Alliance group, and it was just kind of shocking to hear a student be that outward with their bigotry. And with that being said, that show was very rough, and it was not easy at all. And today here in Kansas City was amazing because you get to experience shows where everybody already knows what they already know what bigotry is. They know what consent is. They know what victim blaming is. They know what power, rank, and privilege is. And you can still have that conversation, and it'll be a little more heightened, and you can tack awareness onto awareness. Whereas last night it was just, we just need to be aware. We got to build like just a basic awareness of what's going on. Whereas today in Kansas City, we were able to talk about being aware of our awareness and how do we feel about this, and why are we, like moving certain ways, like physically, how do we feel about our bodies when these topics come up. And then people can really get into a different space about, they can get into a different space about disparity, a different space about power, rank, and privilege, a different space about, white supremacy, free labor, attempted genocide being the roots of this country, and going forward with that. And obviously you can't forget the patriarchy, male privilege, and we can engage with that, and we can move forward with that. And today was really great. But I'm hesitant to say that last night wasn't great. I say last night was tough, but it was also great, and it was beautiful because as it was happening, we're talking about consent and everything, and the picture was very, very clear on what was going on and where the lack of information was and where the resistance was. And I think when people reveal themselves, as I said in the beginning, when people are vulnerable and they don't know what to do about it, they will show you. And even though I told them that before the show started, they did it anyways. They willingly did it. And for me, it was beautiful last night as it was today, because regardless of what level of education, information, or awareness people are on, they had to engage with it. They had to face up to it. They had to confront it. And that may have been for the better or for the worse. And that may have been a dangerous conversation for some people. We had some survivors walk out last night. But that being said, I think it's all for the better. I think it's for the community, it's for the better, because everybody becomes aware of what their community is going forward. But it could be for the worse of the person if somebody says, hey, I don't want to actually educate myself, and then they move forward, and that could be a detriment to the community. So with all that being said, today was refreshing, and it felt great because it was the polar opposite of last night. And with this job comes these two polar opposites: people that are unwilling, resistant to talk, very cemented in the connotations of what they think their identity is, or what they think the connotations of their identity. And then you have people that are like, okay, tell me more. All right, well, what exactly does that mean? And then you get a conversation going about kind of the conversation, and that really brings, I think, a campus and a company into the heights of a really proactive awareness. And so today was great because my friend Katie helped us out with the show. That was cool. And it just was, it just shows you how large the gamut is in conversation that you can have, and also how much that you can never really know what to expect. And that's what I've loved about this job for the past 15 years. And moving forward, when we create new forums and new narratives, I'm really excited to see what can come out of it. 'Cause doing this, you're talking about the same thing with the same formula, and I'm really excited to move forward with different formulas and different setups. But yeah, I am curious to hear from people like what you think of this and how you go about these tough conversations, and what do you do when somebody willingly refuses to learn more and willingly refuses to hear any other perspective other than their own. What do you do? I have some obviously things that I do, but I'm curious to hear from y'all. What do you do? So that is Kansas City, the end of Kansas City. Tomorrow we wake up and we go to Greenville, South Carolina. We got 2 more shows in Parkville, and then we go to Greenville, South Carolina. But yeah, looking forward to the rest of the tour, and yeah, stick with the channel and you'll see the rest.